UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and the release of Israeli hostages held in Gaza. He witnessed a long line of blocked relief trucks on Egypt's side of the border with Gaza while visiting the Rafah crossing on Saturday. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz criticized Guterres in a social media post for blaming Israel without condemning in any way the Hamas-ISIS terrorists who plunder humanitarian aid. We have more.
Well, the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres visiting that Rafah border, crossing the Egyptian side of the border crossing, calling it a moral outrage that so many aid trucks were lined up on the Egyptian side of the border and unable to access those who so desperately need the help inside the Gaza Strip. He said it was a moral outrage that could not happen. He also called for an ironclad commitment from Israel that humanitarian supplies can receive unfettered access to those who so desperately need it in the Gaza Strip. That this visit will have much of an impact, but it does join a chorus of international pressure when it comes to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, called catastrophic by aid agencies, and in the context of a rift between the Israeli government and some of its closest allies. We saw just in the last day or so Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, here in Israel, meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the war cabinet, urging the Israeli government against an operation in the southern city of Rafah, pinned up against that Egyptian border, saying it would be a mistake and that the US position is that it should not happen. Prime Minister Netanyahu pushing back very firmly, saying even with or without US support, Israeli forces will go into Rafah, an operation which Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, say would lead to humanitarian catastrophe. Alex Kadya in Tel Aviv reporting for DD India.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres began his annual Ramadan solidarity trip in Egypt on Saturday. During his visit, Guterres traveled to northern Sinai and met civilians from Gaza at the General Hospital in El Arish. He spoke with women and children who had been injured during the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. The UN chief also met UN humanitarian workers in Rafah. Following his engagements in Egypt, Guterres will proceed to Jordan, continuing his Ramadan solidarity trip. The UN Security Council is set to vote on a resolution on Monday demanding a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The resolution put forward by the 10 elected council members is backed by Russia and China, who vetoed a US-sponsored resolution on Friday that supported an immediate and sustained ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza. The 22-nation Arab group at the UN issued a statement Friday night appealing to all 15 council members to act with unity and urgency and vote for the resolution to halt the bloodshed, preserve human lives and avert further human suffering and destruction. Since the conflict broke out on October 7, the Security Council has adopted 2 resolutions on the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza, but none has called for a ceasefire.